I want to just address, because I don't often, like when I do my show, I don't get to see the chat, but as you're talking, I'm kind of taking a peek. So I do think it's interesting to hear, and probably, I'm not sure, but probably these are people in my audience, since, as I said, like I haven't been on Substack since 2022, at which point Israel was really on the back burner. So I had probably a lot of people in my audience who supported Israel, um, because it wasn't talked about that much.
Yeah,
Although I have talked about it a lot during my career, but it is true that like 2020, 2022 really wasn't a lot of focus on Israel. It was really an issue that wasn't talked about all that often. And obviously 2023 changed everything. And we had, a lot of people in my audience that left because of it, which I knew was going to happen. And, it's fine if you aren't wanting to have that happen. You might as well stop, doing what you're doing. Otherwise, you're just captive
literally.
to your audience, literally imprisoned by them. And I have an audience I knew over many years that expect to hear things that they don't necessarily agree with. And so I can afford to have that happen. So I say that because now that I'm back on Substack, I think there are a lot of people who are subscribers from back in the day who do still feel strongly in support of Israel. And I'm seeing a couple arguments in the chat like, well, it was Hamas who started this. And I'm always so amazed by that argument, because you can go and look, not, from 2014 or 2017 and 18, when a lot of the flare ups were really severe when Israel was bombing the shit out of Gaza. 2023, all throughout 2023, before October 7th, Israel was bombing and killing civilians in Gaza and the West Bank continuously. And yet they'll say, oh, everything was so peaceful. Hamas started this war. Israel was murdering. In fact, the day before, there was a bombing in the West Bank that killed civilians in Palestinian civilians. And they've been occupying the West Bank and blockading Gaza. We just talked about all the horrific things they've been doing well before. The idea that the war between Israel and the Palestinians began on October 7th, it is one of those kind of propagandistic zombie beliefs that you're shocked people actually still adhere to. And the other issue about genocide, like you said, genocide a few times. Every time you do, people are saying, "Oh, there's no genocide." There's still people left in Palestine. Their population grew. Not only
That's a
are
lie.
leading
That's
genocide, it is a lie. But even if it were true, it wouldn't mean anything, because leading, I think they try and believe or try and depict this claim that Israel committed genocide in Gaza as just being this like fringe claim that only, random Israel haters on the internet would actually assert, when in reality, almost every major body responsible for adjudicating genocide, from human rights organizations to international
Lemkin
tribunals
Institute.
to, yeah, as well as leading scholars of genocide, including leading Israeli scholars of genocide and countless Jewish scholars of genocide. It's basically a global consensus that what Israel did is commit genocide. And I think the certainty that it hasn't comes from a complete misunderstanding of what genocide is. People think, oh, genocide is when you just try and slaughter as many people as possible, as quickly as possible. So they say, oh, look, we could have killed so many more than we did if we wanted to. That's not what genocide is. That's one way of doing genocide. But other forms of genocide are things like trying to drive a population out of a land and eliminate that population, which is the stated Israeli goal of basically evaporating Palestine into Jordan, into Egypt, into other countries, even in Africa, to
Yeah.
eliminate that population, to eliminate that place as a place where human beings can sustain a civilization. And that is classic genocide. And the only thing you have to do to know that was the Israeli goal is go listen to the Israeli leaders who have repeatedly stated that that is their goal. And it's not just their goal, but it's one they've carried out with great efficacy.
I feel like, they sometimes in Israel call us useful idiots for Hamas, but it's really the Israelis who view the Americans who still support them as useful idiots, because they know that they don't listen to what Israeli leaders say. And it is some of the most genocidal rhetoric. You compare it side by side with Nazi rhetoric, and you won't be able to tell the difference. When, what was it, Gallant called Palestinians, we're fighting human animals. Or when Netanyahu said this is a fight with the children of light versus the children of darkness. These are direct quotes pulled from Schutzstaffel commanders. It was Schutzstaffel Commander Wolf of Nazi Germany who said that act about the Nazi army. And he was describing the same to the IDF. And, like you were saying, 2023, before October 7th, was the deadliest year on record for Palestinian children. On record. That's not going all the way back to 1948. But if anyone really wants to pick a start date, it's when Zionists initially decided that they could not live side by side with the indigenous Palestinian people. And they said this state needs to be only for Jewish Zionists, and we need to ethnically cleanse the land. When they decided it was going to be a settler colonial project, settler colonialism is an inherently not a genocide act, but it's a genocidal act because it necessitates the destruction of a civilization that is already in place, a destruction of that to create room to replace it with a foreign civilization. And that's what Zionism is. It's a political ideology. It is a movement. It's not an identity. If you are Jewish, you were not born with that. You are, like you said, educated to it. And many people, unfortunately, are educated into Zionism to supporting Israel, to believing in this Zionist dream of a greater Israel from birth. It's very sad. It's indoctrination. And the fact remains that out of the total population of Zionists in the world, there are far more evangelical Christian Zionists than there will ever be Jewish Zionists for the rest of time. And to say that being anti-Zionist is anti-Jewish is a misnomer. It's a twist. It's a manipulation of the facts and the definitions. Someone said in the chat the Balfour Agreement was, one of those catalysts that really said that the British Empire was going to support the construction of a settler colony, a Jewish settler colony in Palestine. And so there's so many catalysts like that, including 1948 as kind of the revolving central point of this saga of oppression and displacement and loss and longing for the homeland just to be able to live free and equal. I remember, I talked about this recently, but very early on, I had started talking about Palestine online and I saw a video recorded inside Gaza for a few years ago. It was Palestinian children at an UNRWA school run up to the camera, eager, excited, and they looked into the camera one by one and they poured out their wishes. And they didn't wish for money, they didn't wish for anything material. They said, "I want to see my brother again. He's been in jail since I was born for throwing rocks. I wish my father would speak more after our mother was shot by the IDF. I want to go back to the village that I was born in, which was occupied when I was little." This is not something these are not normal things to wish for. There's no Palestinians I've met have not had intense hatred for the Jewish people at all. They just want to be able to live free and equal in their own home.
I just wanted to say something about that, which is well before October 7th, I think 2016, 2017, 2018. Gaza has been called an open air prison, and the reason is because the people who are there aren't allowed to leave. They had an airport. Israel bombed the runway. There's no planes that can leave Gaza, fly to some other place, land back home in Gaza. The borders are closed. If you go near the Israel border and you're Gaza, you'll be shot and killed. The border with Egypt, the dictatorship of Egypt that the United States funds with billions of dollars a year, keeps that border closed as well. So you cannot leave Gaza. And the interesting thing about the Gazan population that is obviously contrary to what Israel propagandists try and maintain is it is a very highly educated, highly literate population. The literacy rate in
Highest in the
Gaza
world.
is almost non-existent. Yeah. And their libraries and their medical facilities. I mean, you talk to international doctors who have been to Gaza and they will say that some of the most sophisticated surgeons and oncologists and others are in Gaza. Their medical facilities, their medical schools have been top notch. All of this completely destroyed. But one of the things that and so a lot of them speak English. A lot of them have been on the internet, very online. And I remember that a genre of Instagram accounts used to be like Gazan teenagers, 15, 16, 18, 20, showing the cities they most dreamed of visiting one day, but knowing that they couldn't leave, they can't get out. They're trapped in Gaza. And the reason is because the Israelis control every aspect of life. They withdrew from occupying Gaza in 2005, but the blockade means that they still control what goes in, what goes out, their airspace, their sea lanes, everything about Gazan life, the West Bank is controlled by Israel. There is no peoples on the planet that I'm aware of that has any dignity that at some point wouldn't do everything possible to gain their freedom from that kind of oppression, including the use of violence.